The battle had been going on for 6 days. Two alien empires, the Kryvax and the Ocelon, had been fighting over a small system called Parin 6. It was not a rich system. It had no rare metals, no valuable gas giants, no ancient ruins worth studying. It had one thing that mattered, a jump gate. Whoever held Parin 6 could move ships fast between two large regions of space. Whoever lost it would have to travel the long way, through empty space, for months. So both empires sent their fleets, hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters. The space around Parin 6 was full of wreckage, drifting metal, and the bodies of the dead. Explosions lit up the dark like small stars that lived for only a second, and then died. Commander Threl Vasu stood on the bridge of the Ocelon flagship, the Ironclaw Dawn. He was tired. His eyes were red from 6 days without real sleep. His crew looked the same. Everyone on the bridge moved slowly now, like their bodies were made of wet sand. "Status," Threl said. "We have lost the Windbreaker and the Solemn Vow," said his second officer, a thin Ocelon named Ket Dora. "The Kryvax pushed us back from the third moon. We are holding the gate, but barely." Threl rubbed his eyes. "And their losses?" "Similar. Maybe worse. Their commander is throwing ships at us like they cost nothing." "They probably do not cost much to him," Threl muttered. "Kryvax breed fast. They think differently about loss than we do." On the other side of the battle, in the Kryvax warcruiser Hunger's End, Fleet Commander Jarn Cole was thinking almost the same thoughts about the Ocelon. Both sides believed the other did not value life. Both sides were wrong. Both sides were simply desperate to win, and desperation made people say cruel things about their enemies. Jarn Cole had lost 12 ships that day alone. His fleet numbered nearly 300 vessels, still a powerful force, but every hour the numbers dropped. He looked at the display in front of him, a great glowing map of the battle, red for his ships, blue for the Ocelon. "We push again at the gate in 1 hour," he said. "We take it before their reinforcements arrive." "Sir," said a young officer near the door, "sensors are picking up something unusual." "What kind of unusual?" "A single ship just entered the system through the outer jump point. It is alone." Jarn Cole frowned. "Identify it." The young officer worked at his console for a moment, his hands trembling slightly. Everyone was tired. Everyone made small mistakes now. "Sir, the ship's design does not match anything in our database. It is not Kryvax. It is not Ocelon. It is not from any of the smaller races we know." "A new player?" Jarn Cole leaned forward. "How large is it?" "Medium-sized, sir. About the size of one of our heavy cruisers. But the engine signature is strange. It is very quiet, almost like it is trying not to be seen, but it is not hiding either. It is just flying straight toward the center of the battle." Jarn Cole stood up from his chair. "Show me." The image appeared on the main screen. It was a sleek, dark ship, gray and black, with long, clean lines. It did not look like it belonged to any military he had ever studied. It had no obvious weapon ports that he could identify. It looked almost peaceful, if a warship could look peaceful. It moved through the drifting wreckage of 100 dead ships without slowing down, without changing course, as if the wreckage was simply not there. "Hail it," Jarn Cole ordered. There was no answer. At the same moment, on the Ocelon flagship, Commander Threl Vasu was staring at the same strange ship on his own screen. "Ket, what is that?" Ket Dora shook her head. "Unknown, sir. It came through the outer jump point 11 minutes ago. It has ignored 3 hailing attempts. It is not responding to any of our channels. Weapon status on it? We cannot tell. Our scanners are not reading any active weapon systems. But sir, something about the metal of the hull. It is absorbing most of our scan pulses instead of reflecting them. We are getting almost no data back." Threl felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 6 days of brutal war, he had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him that this ship was not a small thing. It was not lost. It was not confused. It was here for a reason. "Where is it heading?" he asked. "Directly for the center point between our two fleets," Ket said. "It will arrive in approximately 4 minutes." The single ship kept flying. It did not speed up. It did not slow down. It moved like something that already knew exactly what it was doing and felt no need to hurry or hesitate. Word spread through both fleets fast. Ship captains began asking their commanders the same question, over and over. What is that thing, and why is it flying straight into the middle of a war? Some of the younger Kryvax pilots laughed nervously over the comm channels, joking that the strange ship was lost, or that it was a scout for some third empire looking for an easy kill while both sides were exhausted. Older pilots, the ones who had survived many wars, said nothing. They watched the strange ship's slow approach with tight jaws and narrowed eyes. Something about it did not feel like an easy kill. It felt like the opposite. Jarn Cole called for his intelligence officer, an older Kryvax named Ressa Thule who had studied dozens of species over her long career. Ressa, I need answers. What do we know about ships like this? Ressa studied the display for a long moment before speaking. Commander, I have seen reports. Old reports, mostly rumors from trade routes on the far edge of known space. There is a species out there called humans, not a large empire, not a species that expands much. They keep mostly to themselves, in a small cluster of systems far from here. Humans, Jarn Cole repeated, testing the word. I have never heard of them making war. That is because they almost never do, Ressa said. That is exactly why the rumors exist. Traders who dealt near their space described them as calm, quiet, even boring. Most of the time. But there are also stories. Old stories, hard to confirm. Stories about what happens when a human ship is provoked, or when humans believe something terrible is happening and decide to act. Tell me the stories. Ressa hesitated. They are just stories, Commander. Second-hand, third-hand, but there is a pattern in them. Every story describes a single human ship, alone, entering a conflict that has nothing to do with humanity. And every story ends the same way. The fighting stops. Jarn Cole's eyes narrowed. Stops how? Diplomacy? Threats? The stories do not agree on how. Some traders say the human ships negotiate. Some say they simply outlast everyone else, refusing to leave until both sides give up from exhaustion. And some, Ressa paused again, some say the human ships fight, and that when they fight, they do not fight like anyone else. They do not fight to win a battle. They fight to end an argument completely, so it never starts again. On the Ocelon side, Threl Vasu was hearing a very similar report from his own intelligence officer, an old Ocelon named Biren Set, who had traveled more of the galaxy than almost anyone else on the ship. Humans, Byrne said, his voice low. I met one, once, years ago, on a trade station near the edge of the Varen Expanse. Strange people, quiet, polite even. But there was something about the way the other traders acted around them, like everyone knew a secret and was afraid to say it out loud. What secret? Threl asked. That humans are not what they look like, Byrne said. They look soft. They look slow. Their bodies are not armored. Their claws, if you can even call them that, are small and useless. But every species that has fought them regrets it. Every single one. And the strange part, Commander, is that humans rarely start the fighting. They only finish it. Threl looked back at the screen, where the single dark ship continued its slow, steady approach toward the center of the battlefield. 2 minutes remained until it would arrive at the point exactly between the two fleets. Get me a channel to it again, Threl said. Try every frequency we have. The channel opened. Static hissed through the bridge speakers. Then, after a long pause, a voice came through. It was a translated voice, smooth and calm, running through the universal translator that every advanced species used for first contact. The voice did not sound angry. It did not sound afraid. It sounded, if anything, mildly tired, the way a person sounds when they have been asked to do the same job one too many times. This is Captain Elena Reyes, of the Human Survey and Observation Vessel, Quiet Resolve. I am aware that a battle is taking place in this system. I am requesting that both fleets cease fire immediately. Silence filled both bridges. Then Jarn Cole let out a short, sharp laugh. Cease fire? A single ship, unarmed as far as we can tell, orders 2 entire fleets to stop a war over a jump gate. He shook his head. Whoever you are, Captain, you are either very brave or very foolish. Both, probably, came the reply, calm as before. I am going to say this once more, clearly, so there is no confusion. There are civilian refugee transports hiding in the debris field near the third moon. 41 ships. Over 60,000 people. Families mostly. They were trying to flee this system before your fleets arrived, and now they are trapped, unable to move without being caught in your crossfire. I am not here to take a side in your war. I am here because those people are going to die if the fighting does not stop, and I am not willing to let that happen if I can prevent it. Both commanders stared at their screens. Confirm this, Jarn Cole snapped at his sensor officer. Scan the debris field near the third moon, now. It took several minutes. Both fleets, for the first time in 6 days, briefly slowed their attacks, distracted by the strange new arrival and its stranger claim. When the scan results came back, Jarn Cole felt his stomach tighten. There they were. 41 small civilian ships, engines cold, powered down almost completely, hidden among the wreckage of the battle like small animals hiding from predators in a burning forest. They had been there the entire time. Both fleets had been so focused on each other, so exhausted from 6 days of war, that no one had noticed the civilians hiding in the chaos they had created. How did you find them? Jarn Cole asked into the comm channel, unable to hide the surprise in his voice. We have detected nothing. We were passing through this region on a routine survey mission when we picked up faint distress signals 3 days ago, Captain Reyes answered. We have been tracking this system since then, waiting to see if either of your fleets would notice the civilians on your own. You did not, so here I am. Threl Vasu closed his eyes for a moment. 60,000 people, trapped in the middle of his war, and he had not even known they were there. I will not fire on this ship or on civilians, Threl said over the open channel, loud enough for both fleets to hear. Ocelon forces, hold position. No offensive action until further notice. There was a pause. Then, to his surprise, Jarn Cole's voice answered as well, gruff but firm. Kryvax forces, hold position as well. Let us hear what this human wants. The single dark ship continued its approach, drifting now to a stop exactly between the two exhausted fleets, hanging silently in the wreckage-filled darkness of Parin 6. On the bridges of hundreds of warships, tired soldiers who had been trying to kill each other for 6 days looked at their screens and, for a strange moment, all thought the exact same thought. What happens now? The silence after the two commanders agreed to hold fire did not last long. Static crackled on both bridges as officers reported in, confused about what they were supposed to do now. 6 days of non-stop combat had trained every crew member to react instantly to enemy movement. Now they were being told to simply wait, and waiting felt almost harder than fighting. On the Ironclaw Dawn, Threl Vasu kept his eyes on the small dark ship floating between the fleets. Ket, get me everything we have on human military history. Anything at all. Ket Dora's hands moved fast across her console. There is not much, sir. Humans do not share their full records with outsiders. But there are old reports filed by traders and a few small colonial governments who had contact with them. I am pulling them now. The first file that appeared on the screen was almost 50 years old, a report written by a merchant captain from a species called the Verathi, a peaceful trading people who lived near the edge of human space. Threl read it quickly. The humans do not seek territory, the report said. They do not send colony ships into occupied systems. They do not demand tribute. In this way, they are unlike almost every other spacefaring species we have traded with. For many years, we believed this meant they were weak, or that they lacked ambition. We were wrong on both counts. 23 years ago, a pirate group known as the Cinder Fleet, made up of criminals from several broken empires, attacked a small colony on the edge of human territory. The colony had no military of its own, only a handful of local defense ships. The pirates expected an easy raid. They captured the colony's main settlement and took nearly 4,000 people as either slaves or hostages, planning to sell them or ransom them. A single human warship arrived 11 hours later. Just one ship. The Cinder Fleet had over 30 vessels at the time, crewed by hardened raiders from a dozen different species. By all normal military reasoning, the human ship should have been destroyed within minutes. It was not. Within 6 hours, the Cinder Fleet no longer existed. Every ship was disabled or destroyed. Every hostage was recovered alive. The human ship suffered damage but did not require rescue. We do not know exactly how this was accomplished, because the human government released almost no details, but the wreckage of the Cinder Fleet was later found drifting in that system by independent traders, and the destruction was, in the words of one trader who saw it personally, too precise to be luck, and too complete to be normal war. Threll looked up from the report. Too precise to be luck, he repeated quietly. There is more, sir, Ket said. A second report, from a different source. This one is about the Threndish cartel. Threll had heard of the Threndish cartel before, though only in passing. They were a criminal organization that had, at one point, controlled a large network of illegal weapon shipments across several systems, arming small wars and rebellions for profit, no matter how much suffering it caused. Read it to me, Threll said. Ket cleared her throat and read from the screen. The Threndish cartel operated for nearly 30 years before its sudden collapse. Investigators later determined the collapse began after the cartel attempted to purchase weapons-grade material from a human trading post, believing humans to be an easy target for theft, given their reputation for peaceful behavior. The theft attempt failed. Cartel forces, numbering close to 200 armed personnel and several small warships, were repelled by station security in under 20 minutes, with minimal human losses. That does not sound like much, Threll said. 200 people against a trading post. There is more, Ket continued. Following the failed theft, the human trading post did not simply defend itself and move on. It reported the incident to the wider human government. 6 weeks later, the Threndish cartel's main base of operations, a heavily fortified station believed to be nearly impossible to locate without inside knowledge, was destroyed. The cartel's leadership, along with its entire fleet, ceased to exist within that single engagement. No survivors were confirmed. No human casualties were reported. The human government released a single public statement afterward, which read only, "The threat has been resolved." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Even the younger officers who had been half listening while running their own stations had stopped to hear this. "Sir," said one of the weapons officers, a young Ocelon named Faro, "why would a species with that kind of power not build an empire? Why stay small?" Threll thought about it for a long moment before answering. Maybe because power was never the point for them, he said finally. Or maybe they learned something the rest of us have not learned yet. That having the power to destroy everything does not mean you should try to own everything. On the Kryvax ship, a very similar conversation was happening. Jarn Cole had gathered his senior officers around the central display, all of them now looking at the strange, quiet human ship sitting motionless between the two fleets. "I do not like this," said his weapons chief, a large Kryvax named Dross Karn. "One ship, it is a trick. Maybe it wants us both distracted, while a real threat approaches from behind." "Sensors show nothing else in the system," Ressathul said. "No other ships, no cloaked signatures, just the human vessel and the refugee transports it claims to be protecting." "Then it is bluffing," Dross said. "It cannot truly threaten two entire fleets. We outnumber it 500 to 1. If it attacks, we destroy it in seconds." Jarn Cole did not answer right away. He was staring at the human ship's outline on the screen, remembering the stories Ressa had told him earlier. "They do not fight to win a battle. They fight to end an argument completely, so it never starts again." "Ressa," he said slowly, "you said there were stories about human ships fighting. Do you have any actual details? Anything beyond rumor?" Ressa nodded, and pulled up another file. "There is one incident that is better documented than most, because it happened near a neutral trading hub, with many witnesses from several species. A rogue Kryvax splinter fleet, made up of soldiers who had abandoned our military during an internal conflict many years ago, attacked a neutral system that had no real defenses. They believed it would be an easy conquest, a place to build a new base far from Kryvax law. I remember hearing of this," Jarn Cole said. "The Halvin Drift incident. It happened before my time in command." "Yes, Commander. The splinter fleet numbered 43 ships. A single human vessel, on a diplomatic mission unrelated to the conflict, was present in the system when the attack began. According to witness accounts from 3 different neutral trading crews who watched from a safe distance, the human ship gave one warning, a single warning, over open comm, telling the splinter fleet to withdraw or be destroyed. And they did not withdraw, Jarn Cole guessed. "They did not," Ressa confirmed. They laughed at the warning, according to the witnesses. One Splinter Fleet captain reportedly said the human ship would be, and I am translating loosely here, a nice bonus kill before breakfast. What happened? The engagement lasted 11 minutes, Ressa said. At the end of it, all 43 Splinter Fleet ships were destroyed or disabled. The human ship had taken damage, but remained functional. It did not pursue survivors who tried to flee. It simply returned to its diplomatic mission, as though nothing unusual had happened. When the neutral trading hub's local government later asked the human crew for an official report, the human captain reportedly said only, "They chose violence. We finished what they started. There is nothing more to say." Dross Karn was quiet now, his earlier confidence fading slightly. 11 minutes, 43 ships. It is one account, Jarn Cole said, though his voice had lost some of its edge. One story, even a well-documented one, does not prove a pattern. There are others, Ressa said gently. I only chose that one because it had the clearest evidence. Commander, in all my years studying other species, I have never found a pattern this consistent. Every credible account of humans in combat describes the same thing. They avoid war when they can. They warn their enemies clearly before acting. And when the warning is ignored, the outcome is always, without exception, total and swift. Jarn Cole looked back at the screen, at the small dark shape of the quiet resolve. Sitting calmly in the middle of two exhausted war fleets, surrounded by wreckage from 6 days of brutal fighting between two much larger powers, and yet showing no fear at all. She asked us to hold our fire, he said quietly, not because she is weak, because she is trying to avoid what happens if we do not. On the Ironclaw Dawn. Threll Vasu reached the same conclusion at almost the same moment. He opened a channel to the human ship. Captain Reyes, he said, this is Commander Threll Vasu of the Ocelon Fleet. We have agreed to hold position. I want to discuss the safe evacuation of the refugee transports. But I also want to understand something. Why did you come alone? A single ship, into the middle of a war between two much larger powers. Did your government send an escort? Backup forces? There was a short pause before Captain Reyes answered, and when she did, her voice carried a strange kind of tired honesty that surprised him. No, Commander. I did not request backup, because I did not believe I would need it. Humanity does not send fleets to stop small conflicts like this one. We do not have the resources, and frankly, it is not always our place to interfere in wars between other species over territory and resources. But civilians, Commander, 60,000 innocent people trapped in a crossfire that has nothing to do with them. That is different. That is not a war I am choosing to join. That is simply a wrong I am not willing to let happen while I have the ability to stop it. And if we had refused your warning? Threll asked, if both fleets had continued firing, ignored you completely. Another pause, longer this time. Then I would have done what was necessary to protect those civilians, Captain Reyes said simply. I would have preferred not to. I still hope it does not come to that. But I want you to understand something clearly, Commander, because I think it matters. This ship is not here to fight your war. It is here because I refuse to watch innocent people die when I have the power to prevent it. Those are very different things, and the difference matters more than you might think. Threll Vasu looked at the wreckage floating outside his viewport, remnants of 6 days spent trying to kill an enemy he barely understood over a gate that, in this moment, suddenly felt very small and very unimportant. Understood, Captain, he said quietly. Tell me what you need from us. Captain Elena Reyes did not answer Threll's question right away. On the bridge of the quiet resolve. She was studying a display of her own, one that showed the positions of both fleets, the drifting wreckage, and the hidden refugee ships near the third moon. Her small crew, only 9 people total, watched her quietly, waiting for orders. Lieutenant Osei, she said to her tactical officer, a calm young man sitting near the back of the bridge. What is our safest evacuation route for the transports? Osei pulled up the star charts. There is a narrow corridor along the outer edge of the debris field, Captain. It avoids most of the heavy wreckage and stays away from both fleets' current positions. If both sides hold their fire, we could move all 41 transports through it in about 90 minutes, moving slow and careful so the older ships do not break apart. Good. Send the route to both commanders. Elena opened the main comm channel again. Commander Vasu, Commander Cole, I am sending you both a safe evacuation corridor for the refugee transports. I need both fleets to hold complete ceasefire along this corridor for the next 2 hours. No maneuvers, no repositioning near it. Can you both agree to this? On the Ironclaw Dawn. Threll studied the proposed corridor. It cut close to Ocelon-held territory near the gate, but not dangerously so. Agreed, he said. Ocelon forces will hold position and keep the corridor clear. There was a longer pause from the Kryvax side. Jarn Cole was looking at the same corridor, and he did not like what he saw. The route would take the refugee ships uncomfortably close to a group of Kryvax support vessels that had been quietly repairing damaged fighters near the edge of the battlefield. Captain Reyes, Jarn Cole said, the corridor passes near our repair group. I want assurance that this is not a trick to move Ocelon forces into position, under cover of a rescue mission. It is not a trick, Commander, Elena said, but I understand your concern. I am willing to have my own ship fly alongside the transport convoy the entire way, as a visible guarantee that no combat forces are hiding among them. If any Ocelon military vessel enters that corridor without my confirmation, you have my word that I will stop it myself before it reaches your repair group. Jarn Cole considered this. It was a strange offer. A single ship, offering to personally guarantee the safety of an enemy fleet's support vessels, using nothing but her own word and her own ship as proof. And yet, after everything Ressa had told him, after everything he had read in the reports, he found himself believing her. Agreed, he said finally. But Captain, know this. If this is a trick, my fleet still outnumbers yours by a wide margin. I am trusting you, because the evidence says I should, not because I have forgotten how to fight a war. I understand completely, Commander, Elena said. I would expect nothing less from someone in your position. The evacuation began. Slowly, carefully, the 41 refugee transports powered up their engines and began moving out of the debris field, following the corridor exactly as planned. Elena flew the quiet resolve. Alongside them, close enough that both fleets could see her clearly on their sensors the entire time, a silent guarantee holding the piece together. It was during this slow, careful evacuation that something happened which neither commander expected. A third fleet arrived. Sir, Ket Dora's voice cracked with alarm. New contacts. Entering from the far jump point. Unknown signatures. At least 60 ships, moving fast. Threll's exhaustion vanished instantly, replaced by sharp focus. Identify them. It took only a moment. It is the Vekrid Syndicate, Ket said, horror creeping into her voice. Pirate raiders. They must have been tracking this battle for days, waiting for both fleets to weaken each other, before moving in to scavenge the wreckage and pick off survivors. On the Kryvax side, Jarn Cole received the same warning at nearly the same moment. He knew the Vekrid Syndicate by reputation. They were not a proud military force. They were scavengers and killers who preyed on weakened fleets after major battles, stripping wreckage for parts and slaughtering survivors who could not defend themselves. Worse, they had a well-known history of attacking refugee ships specifically, because unarmed civilian transports made for easy, profitable targets with almost no risk. They are heading directly for the evacuation corridor, his sensor officer reported. They will intercept the refugee transports in approximately 6 minutes. Jarn Cole's mind raced. His fleet was exhausted, spread thin from 6 days of fighting the Ocelon. So was the Ocelon fleet. Neither side had enough combat-ready ships positioned close enough to reach the corridor in time. The Vekrid raiders had timed their arrival perfectly, exploiting the very ceasefire that was supposed to save the refugees. Get every available ship moving toward that corridor now, Jarn Cole shouted. Ressa, contact the Ocelon commander. Tell him we need to coordinate, immediately. No time for pride. But even as the order left his mouth, he knew it would not be fast enough. 6 minutes was not enough time for either fleet to reposition combat-ready ships across the vast distances of a battle that had spread out over 6 days. On the quiet resolve. Elena Reyes had already seen the same threat on her own sensors, and she was already moving. Osei, get the transports turning back toward the debris field, now. Tell them to power down and hide again, same as before. It will not be perfect cover, but it is better than sitting in open space. Captain, the Vecrid ships will reach us before the transports can get back to cover, Osei said, his voice tight but controlled. We have maybe 90 seconds before they are in weapons range of the slowest transports. Elena stood up from her chair. Then I will buy them the time they need. Helm, take us between the transports and the incoming raiders. Full power to forward shields. Captain, said her helm officer, a young woman named Priya. 60 raider ships against 1. Even for us, that is. I know the math, Priya, Elena said calmly. Do it anyway. The quiet resolve moved. It did not move like a warship trying to intimidate an enemy with size or speed. It moved with quiet, practiced precision, sliding into position directly between the fleeing refugee transports and the incoming wave of Vecrid raiders. A single dark shape placing itself between 60,000 innocent lives and 60 ships built for nothing but violence and profit. On both the Ocelon and Kryvax bridges, officers watched in stunned silence as the small human ship positioned itself alone against an overwhelming force, without hesitation, without waiting for permission or backup from either fleet that had, until minutes ago, been trying to kill each other. She is insane, Droskarn muttered on the Kryvax bridge. 1 ship against 60. Or she knows exactly what she is doing, Resathul said quietly, remembering every report she had ever read. The Vecrid Syndicate's lead raider ship, a heavily modified cruiser called the Prophet's Edge, opened a channel of its own, broadcasting to the entire system, its captain's voice full of mocking amusement. Well now, the Vecrid captain said, his translated voice dripping with dark humor. Look what we have here. A little human toy, all alone, trying to play hero. Move aside, little ship, and we might let you live long enough to watch us take what we came for. I am not going to move aside, Elena Reyes answered, her voice steady and calm. There are 60,000 civilians behind me. Families, children, people who have already lost their homes to a war that was not theirs to fight. I am asking you, once, to turn your fleet around and leave this system peacefully. The Vecrid captain laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. 60,000 civilians is 60,000 reasons to stay, human. Their transports alone are worth a fortune in salvage, and the people inside them are worth even more on certain markets that I am sure a soft, peaceful little species like yours would not approve of. Last chance, little ship. Move, or be destroyed with everyone hiding behind you. Elena's expression did not change, though something in her eyes hardened, something that had nothing to do with fear. I gave you the warning, she said quietly. You made your choice. She closed the channel. On the Ocelon bridge, Threlvasu leaned forward, gripping the edge of his console so hard his claws dug into the metal. Ket, weapons range on that corridor, now. Can we support her? Negative, sir. We are still 4 minutes out even at maximum speed. Then get us moving anyway. I will not sit here and watch this happen. On the Kryvax side, Zarn Kol was shouting nearly identical orders, his exhausted fleet pushing every remaining engine to its limit, trying desperately to close the distance in time. Both commanders, enemies only hours before, found themselves fighting toward the exact same goal for the first time in 6 days. But it was already too late for them to arrive before the fighting began. The 60 ships of the Vecrid Syndicate surged forward, weapons charging, confident and eager, expecting an easy massacre. The single human ship did not retreat. It did not hesitate. The quiet resolve held its position exactly where it was, directly between the raiders and the fleeing transports, its engines humming with quiet, patient power, waiting for the enemy to close the distance and make the first move. The Vecrid raiders opened fire first. 60 ships unleashed a storm of energy weapons and missiles at the small human vessel, a wall of destruction that should have overwhelmed any single ship within seconds, no matter how advanced its technology might be. On both the Ocelon and Kryvax bridges, officers held their breath, certain they were about to watch a brave but hopeless sacrifice. The quiet resolve did not explode. Its shields flared bright, absorbing the first wave of fire in a shimmering dome of light that stretched around the ship like a second skin. Elena Reyes sat calmly in her chair, watching the incoming fire with the focus of someone who had trained for exactly this moment, many times before. Shields at 89%, Priya reported from the helm, her voice tight but no longer panicked. Holding steady. Return fire, Elena said. Disable only. No unnecessary destruction. Target their engines and weapon systems first. The quiet resolve fired back. It did not fire wildly or in a panic. Every shot from the human ship struck with precise, almost surgical accuracy, targeting the engines and weapon arrays of the nearest raider ships one by one. A Vekrid cruiser's main engine flared and died. A raider fighter's weapon pod exploded in a small, controlled burst that left the rest of the ship intact. Within the first 30 seconds of combat, 6 Vekrid ships had been disabled without a single crew member killed. On the Prophet's edge. The Vekrid captain's amusement turned quickly to confusion, then to something closer to alarm. What is this? Focus fire. Bring down its shields, now. The raiders concentrated their attack, dozens of ships firing everything they had at the single human vessel. The quiet resolve shook under the impact, its shields dropping to 60%, then 50%, sparks flashing briefly across a few damaged panels inside the ship. Shields at 48%, Captain, Priya reported, sweat visible on her forehead now. Understood, Elena said calmly. Say, status on the transports? 34 of the 41 have reached cover in the debris field, Captain. The remaining 7 are still exposed, moving as fast as they can. Then we hold a little longer. Elena's voice did not waver. Continue disabling their ships. Priority targets. Anything that could threaten the exposed transports directly. The battle raged on, and slowly, something remarkable became clear to everyone watching from both the Ossilan and Kryvax fleets. Now closing fast but still not close enough to help directly. The human ship was not simply surviving against impossible odds, it was winning. One by one, Vekrid ships fell silent, their weapons destroyed, their engines disabled, drifting helplessly in space, while their crews scrambled inside, no longer a threat to anyone. The quiet resolve moved between them with an eerie, practiced grace, weaving through incoming fire with maneuvers that seemed almost impossible for a ship of its size, always positioning itself to protect the fleeing transports no matter how the battle shifted around it. It is like watching a single person fight off a pack of wolves, Resathul murmured on the Kryvax bridge, and somehow winning. Jarn Cole said nothing. He was watching the tactical display with an expression none of his officers had seen on him before, something between awe and quiet fear. The Vekrid captain, watching his fleet crumble around him, made a desperate decision. Enough games, he snarled over the open channel. All ships, target the transports directly. If we cannot have the little humans kill, we will take what we came for anyway. Several Vekrid ships broke away from attacking the quiet resolve and turned instead toward the 7 remaining exposed refugee transports, weapons charging for a direct strike against unarmed civilian ships. Something changed in Elena Reyes's voice when she spoke next. It was still calm, but the calm had a different quality to it now, colder and harder than before. Priya, get us between them and the transports. Say, target every ship moving toward the civilians. Full power, no more restraint on those specific targets. Disable them completely, immediately. The quiet resolve surged forward with a burst of speed that surprised everyone watching, cutting across the battlefield in a tight, controlled arc that placed it directly in the path of the raiders turning toward the transports. In the space of only a few seconds, 4 Vekrid ships that had broken formation to attack civilians were struck with such precise, overwhelming force that they went instantly dark, engines dead, weapons destroyed, all 4 disabled, almost simultaneously. It was not luck. It was not desperation. It was the deliberate, controlled application of exactly enough force to stop the threat, and not one bit more than was needed. Every alien officer watching, on both the Ossilan and Kryvax sides, understood in that moment that they were not watching a lucky survivor. They were watching a warrior operating well within her true capability, holding back far more power than she had shown so far. The Vekrid captain understood it too, and for the first time, real fear entered his voice. Fall back. All ships, fall back now. But it was too late for some of them. As the remaining Vekrid ships began to retreat, the Quiet resolve. Did not pursue with lethal force. True to Elena's earlier orders, it continued disabling fleeing ships rather than destroying them, stripping the raiders of their ability to fight or flee quickly, but leaving their crews alive inside drifting, powerless hulls. Within 11 minutes of the battle beginning, it was over. Of the 60 Vecrid raider ships that had entered the system, 43 were completely disabled, drifting helplessly among the wreckage of the earlier Ocelon-Krivax battle. The remaining 17 fled the system as fast as their engines could carry them, abandoning their comrades without hesitation. All 41 refugee transports had reached safe cover. Not a single civilian had been harmed. The quiet resolve itself showed heavy damage along its hull, scorched and scarred from the intense combat, its shields nearly depleted, but it remained fully operational, floating calmly in the space it had just defended, as if the entire battle had simply been a difficult but ordinary task that needed to be done. Silence fell across both the Ocelon and Krivax fleets, still several minutes away from the corridor, having watched the entire engagement unfold on their sensors from a distance, unable to arrive in time to help, and, as it turned out, completely unnecessary to the outcome. Threl Vasu sat frozen in his chair for a long moment before finally speaking. Ket, did we just watch one ship defeat 60 pirate raiders in 11 minutes? Yes, sir, Ket said quietly, still staring at the display. We did. On the Krivax bridge, Jarn Cole finally broke his own long silence. Ressa, he said slowly. You said the stories about human combat were consistent. I understand now why. Commander, Ressa said, her voice unusually soft. I do not think we saw everything that ship is capable of. I think we saw only what was necessary to protect the civilians, and nothing more. Notice, Commander, that she disabled the raiders. She did not destroy them, even when she clearly could have. Even at war, even under attack, she showed restraint most of us would not have shown in her position. Jarn Cole looked at the image of the quiet resolve. On his screen, damaged but steady, still holding its position, still watching over the refugee transports it had risked everything to protect. Open a channel to the human ship, he said quietly. When the channel opened, Elena Reyes's voice came through, tired now, the adrenaline of battle clearly fading, but still calm and clear. Commander Cole, Commander Vasu, I apologize for the disruption to your ceasefire. The Vecrid Syndicate has been raiding weakened fleets in this region for years, and I suspect they were tracking this battle from the start, waiting for both of you to exhaust yourselves before moving in. The refugee transports are safe. I would recommend both of your fleets take custody of the disabled raider ships. They will need to answer for their history of attacks on civilians, and that is a matter for proper authorities, not for me. Threl Vasu found himself speaking before he had fully decided what to say. Captain Reyes, that was not luck. That was not even simple skill. What we just witnessed was a level of combat capability that neither of our fleets, combined, could easily match. Why did your people never tell the rest of the galaxy what you are truly capable of? There was a pause before Elena answered, and when she did, her voice carried a quiet, tired honesty that seemed to reach both bridges equally. Because it does not matter what we are capable of, Commander. It only matters what we choose to do with that capability. My people learned a long time ago, through mistakes we are not proud of, that power used carelessly causes more harm than the threats it is meant to stop. We do not want to be known as a species to fear. We would rather be known as a species that only acts when it truly must, and even then, does no more harm than is necessary. That is not weakness, Commander. That is the only kind of strength worth having. In the hours that followed, both fleets moved into the corridor together, something that would have seemed impossible only a day earlier. Ocelon and Krivax repair crews worked side by side, gathering the disabled Vecrid raider ships and placing their surviving crews under joint custody, an arrangement neither commander would have imagined agreeing to a week before. Threl Vasu stood near an observation window on the Ironclaw Dawn, watching the quiet resolve. Hold position near the refugee transports, small drone repair units crawling across its damaged hull like tiny insects, patching the worst of the scorch marks left by the battle with the Vecrid Syndicate. Ket Dora approached quietly and stood beside him. Sir, Commander Cole is requesting a direct channel. He says he wants to speak with you and Captain Reyes together. Threl nodded slowly. Open it. Jarn Cole's face appeared on the display a moment later, looking as tired as Threll felt, but with something different in his expression now, something that had not been there during 6 days of war. Not quite respect, not yet, but the beginning of it. "Commander Vasu," Jarn Cole said, "I believe we have some things to discuss." "I agree," Threll said, starting perhaps with the fact that we have been fighting for 6 days over a jump gate, while 60,000 refugees nearly died in the middle of it, and neither of our fleets even noticed they were there. Jarn Cole was quiet for a moment. "That thought has been troubling me as well," he admitted. "We were both so focused on defeating each other that we stopped seeing anything else. I do not enjoy admitting that, Commander, but it is the truth." A third voice joined the channel. "If I may add something," Elena Reyes said, her voice calm as always, though clearly weary from the battle. "I am not here to tell either of you how to run your war. That is not my place, and it never was. But I would ask you both to consider something. You have both lost hundreds of ships and thousands of lives fighting over a single jump gate. Is there truly no way to share it, or to find another solution that would cost less than what this war has already cost both of you?" Threll and Jarn Cole were both silent for a long moment, each thinking of the friends and crew members they had lost over the past 6 days, all for a gate that, in the aftermath of nearly losing 60,000 civilians, suddenly felt much less important than it had before. "There may be a way," Jarn Cole said slowly. "The Kryvacs have not needed exclusive control of the gate itself. We needed guaranteed access, and guaranteed safety for our ships passing through Ocelon-controlled space. If a shared arrangement could guarantee that access, without requiring us to hold the system by force." "The Ocelon could accept something similar," Threll said, surprising himself slightly with how quickly the words came. "We do not need to own the gate outright. We need to know it will not be used against us. A joint administration, perhaps, with agreed rules for both fleets." "It is a start," Jarn Cole said. "A difficult conversation, still to come, but a start." Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile that neither commander could see, but that came through faintly in her voice. "That is all I hoped for, commanders. Not a solution handed down by an outsider, but a reason for both of you to find your own. I believe you can manage the rest from here." "Captain," Threll said, "before you go, I want to ask you something, if you will permit it." "Of course." "You risked your life, and the lives of your small crew, for civilians who are not your people, in a war that has nothing to do with your empire. You fought 60 pirate ships alone, and showed restraint even in the middle of that battle, disabling instead of destroying wherever you could. I do not fully understand why. Most species I know would not take that risk for strangers." There was a pause before Elena answered, and when she did, her voice was quiet and thoughtful. "Commander, my people are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes in our own history, wars among ourselves that cost more lives than either of your empires has lost in this conflict. We learned, eventually, and painfully, that strength without responsibility becomes just another kind of cruelty. When we finally reached the stars and met other species, we made a choice. We decided that whatever power we had, we would only use it to protect, never to conquer. It is not because we are better than anyone else. It is because we know exactly how bad things can get when power is used carelessly, and we do not wish to repeat our own worst mistakes on a larger stage." Jarn Cole considered this for a long moment. "That is a rare philosophy, Captain, for a species with your capability." "Perhaps," Elena said, "but I believe it is the only philosophy that lets a species like mine exist peacefully among neighbors as powerful as both of yours, without either side feeling the need to go to war with us out of fear. We do not want to be feared, Commander. We would rather be trusted. Fear fades and turns to resentment eventually. Trust, if it is earned honestly, tends to last much longer." News of the battle at Parin 6 spread quickly across trade routes and diplomatic channels in the following weeks. The story grew slightly with each retelling, as stories often do, but the core of it remained true and remarkable enough on its own. A single human ship, unarmed as far as most scanners could tell, had entered a war zone between two powerful empires, convinced both sides to hold their fire long enough to save 60,000 civilian lives, then single-handedly defeated a pirate raiding fleet 6 times its own size, without needing to destroy most of the enemy ships it fought. Other species who had long dismissed humanity as a small, unambitious power content to stay quietly in their own small region of space, began looking at human territory with new eyes. Some grew nervous, wondering what else humanity might be capable of that had never been fully tested. Others, more thoughtful, understood the deeper lesson in what had happened at Parin 6. Humanity had not sought power to expand or conquer. It had simply refused to look away when innocent people needed protecting, and it had turned out to possess more than enough strength to make that choice matter. Threl Vasu and Jarn Cole did eventually reach an agreement over the jump gate, a joint administration that satisfied neither commander perfectly, but that ended the war, and its terrible cost, far sooner than continued fighting ever would have. It was not a perfect peace, but it was a real one, built on exhaustion, hard lessons, and, in some small but real way, the example set by a single human captain who had refused to let a war blind either side to the people caught inside it. Months later, on a quiet human colony far from Parin 6, Captain Elena Reyes sat in a small office, writing her final report on the incident for her government's records. It was a simple, understated document, much like the woman who wrote it, containing none of the drama that had already begun spreading through alien trade routes and diplomatic gossip across a dozen systems. The situation at Parin 6 was resolved without further loss of civilian life. She wrote, "Both the Ocelon and Kryvax fleets showed reasonable cooperation once the immediate danger to refugees was addressed. The Vekrid raider threat was neutralized, with minimal casualties on all sides, and disabled vessels were transferred to joint custody for proper legal proceedings. I would recommend continued monitoring of this region, but I do not believe further direct intervention will be necessary at this time." She paused before adding one final line, something a little more personal than the rest of the report, something she was not sure her superiors would even read carefully, but that felt important to write anyway. "I would also note, for the record, that both commanders involved expressed genuine willingness to reconsider the value of their conflict once the human cost was made clear to them. It is my belief that most conflicts, between most species, could be resolved more quickly, and with far less suffering, if someone were simply willing to step into the middle of them and remind both sides what they stand to lose. I do not believe this requires overwhelming force. I believe it only requires the willingness to try, and the courage to keep trying, even when the odds seem impossible. That is, I think, the only real advantage humanity has ever had, not our strength, our stubbornness in refusing to look away." She closed the file, sent it to headquarters, and looked out her window at the quiet evening sky of her home colony, thinking not of the battle she had just survived, but of the 60,000 people who had gone home safely, because, for once, someone had simply refused to let a war decide their fate for them. Far away, across the stars, in 100 different trade stations and diplomatic halls, the story of the lone human ship that had entered a war zone and made an entire alien fleet retreat continued to spread, growing a little larger with each telling, but never quite losing the simple truth at its heart, that sometimes the greatest strength was not found in the size of a fleet, but in the quiet, stubborn refusal of a single ship to look away from those who needed protecting.